Will the New Orleans Saints add former Steelers wide receiver James Washington to their offensive core? We'll see, but we do know that they're meeting this Monday. Let's talk about it right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? It's Chris Vogel of the Straight Up Saints podcast, bringing you another program here brought to you by Scott Vicknair Injury Lawyers. Have you been hurt in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, hurt offshore? Scott Vicknair handles it all. You can give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. Mention it at the top of the program. New Orleans Saints bring in James Washington for a visit. It's actually taking place this Monday as we record this and bring it to you on Buku Media's YouTube page. And it's an interesting situation, right? James Washington's not exactly the type of player that if this deal goes down, you start, doing jumping jacks and cartwheels and start, singing your praises. But I do like this idea of bringing in another body. And I think that for the Saints, you can never have enough wide receivers. We've learned this over the years. When they didn't have depth, we learned this when they did have depth. Guys go down. I think of last season, right? Saints draft Chris Olave. Michael Thomas comes back, or at least we think so. They bring in Jarvis Landry. We're feeling good. And then you realize Michael Thomas gets hurt, barely plays. Then Jarvis Landry gets hurt on and off. And when he was on the field towards the end, didn't make much of a difference. And then it was Chris Olave and then waiting for the emergence of Rashid Shaheed, which was great. But I do love the idea of the Saints continuously adding depth to that wide receiver room. Now, they did it in free agency, bringing in Bryan Edwards, the former Raider. Did it in the draft, making that trade with the Broncos, getting rid of Adam Troutman, putting themselves in position to get A.T. Perry, who, from all looks of it, has the build of a wide receiver that could be a playmaker in the NFL at 6'4", made a lot of plays at Wake Forest. But I think it doesn't hurt to bring in James Washington, see what's up. And I think this is a situation where, obviously, if you were to sign him, you're not breaking the bank, which makes it all the more, I'd say, tolerable / fans should be more approved of it than other moves. Just 27 years old. You're going to be used to what he did with the Steelers, right? What were the numbers? 114 catches, over 1,600 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns. Last season was with Dallas. Now, the interesting thing is when Dallas signed him, the assumption was he'd be their wide receiver 3 behind Gallup and CeeDee Lamb, but he gets a foot injury in the summer. That foot injury holds him out all the way till December. And by the time he's playing in December and he's coming off the foot injury, he's not right. They just cut him anyway. Only got to play in 2 games. It was an unfortunate situation for James Washington. You thought you'd go into Dallas, you'd be that third guy as a pass catcher. You don't really get that chance. And part of it's the foot injury. Maybe some of it was he just wasn't cutting it. But I would imagine the foot injury, for it to just kind of derail any hopes you had early, that has to sting. So you kind of say, all right, how much stock do you put into that? I don't know. And I think the only way you really find out is bringing the guy in, which the Saints are doing, getting your physical done, seeing how he looks on the field if you were to keep him at least around for OTAs, training camp, whatever. But he's still just 27 years old. And we're talking about a former second-round pick out of Oklahoma State that in his heyday, which is really the 2019 season, I know that's forever ago, it feels like, was a big play type of receiver. He had 730-plus receiving yards, only 44 catches. Now, my math isn't great at times, but I know that's a pretty good yards per reception average compared to other receivers. So, he can get downfield. Still just 27. I think it's worth a shot. And again, I say this because this is not the type of signing the Saints are going to make. You're like, oh my God, why would you make this move? No, you're bringing him in, testing it out, kind of dipping your toes in the water. And I think if you bring James Washington in, you're looking at this Saints wide receiver room and you're going Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, A.T. Perry, Traquan Smith, Bryan Edwards, James Washington. We're talking about 7 wide receivers that are going to be vying for spots. And this could be, not even including undrafted players, not including those guys like a Kirk Merritt who always kind of rise from the ashes, guys like a Keith Kirkwood. So I think that for New Orleans, I'll never say no to more wide receiver help. I'll never say no to more wide receiver help, specifically when it's a player like James Washington, who is a former second-round pick, who has talent. And unfortunately, injuries did hurt him last year. Let's just be honest about it. So for me, and I'd imagine for some of you, it would be yeah, why not? Take a flyer on him as long as everything checks out physically and they like what they see in the player. Like I said, he's just 27 years old. So we'll see what happens there. But I pose the question to you. Should the Saints sign James Washington? If so, if you believe the answer is yes, let me know in the comment section why. If not, I'd also love to know your thoughts as well. But as always, guys, make sure to subscribe to Buku Media's YouTube page so you get alerted for new videos like this. And as always, stay tuned for more content here on the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for